Remember as a kid and all these new and awesome games came out, and when you got them, you played them to your heart's content? And now, all grown up, we are reliving bits and pieces of them through remakes and remasters and ports, which is a factor in Brett's campus of retro reflexivity and the idea of nostalgia. In recent years, many game companies such as Xbox, Nintendo, and Sony are using nostalgia as a business model to get consumers towards modern consoles and games. Nintendo specifically shows a business model that caters to this idea of retro nostalgia by making it more accessible to everyone so that they can relive the altered version of the nostalgia while keeping the core gameplay for the most part. In this video, we'll be breaking down those elements of nostalgia. In this video, I will use the example of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe for Nintendo Switch and various other titles in the franchise to show how Nintendo uses nostalgia as a business model. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is an enhanced port to the Wii U's Mario Kart 8. This version provided the same game with the added features, which was released for the Switch in Nintendo 17 as a launch title. Some differences from the Wii U version included the base DLC of the Wii U, all the characters unlockable for the start, use coins to unlock car parts. There's a couple gameplay tweaks such as double items and new items, the return of battle modes and new characters, and a whole bunch of other game mechanics and stuff. For me, I chose this game in particular as I grew up with Mario Kart DS. This was the most recent game I was able to play in the series. As someone who grew up with Mario Kart in general, it brings a lot of memories and nostalgia, allowing me to relive those experiences, especially with the remade tracks and stuff like that. Over the course of the Mario Kart franchise, the series evolved from retro to what we know it as today. Camper talks about this idea about remediation and photorealism. As Camper put it, as 3D game technologies advanced in the mid-1990s, graphic programmers looked for ways to bring an aura of realism to their images. Nintendo may not use retro aesthetics in their modern games, but doesn't mean it's not forgotten. In fact, it's quite the opposite. They want to keep around the games for as long time. They just adapt it for modern consoles and the modern audiences. They do this because Nintendo knows the demographic. By calling back on these fan favorites from previous games, Nintendo uses nostalgia as a way for them to make money on their modern games by bringing back classic fan favorite features and tracks. Nintendo uses nostalgia as a business model because as a business, they know what most of the audience is based off of. A lot of their nostalgia is based off of memories, and there's a memory attached with a living experience, in this case, Mario Kart. People would remember and look back on it. Most of the Switch's demographic is made of people in their late 20s to the early 30s, which most of them were born between the 1980s to the 1980s. Nintendo uses this information for their game developments, as Brett Camper puts it, to evoke childhood memories of particular games. They do this in a number of different ways, by bringing back old features to modern iterations of the game, for example, Animal Crossing, porting over games, and even going as far as remastering them. They also produced numerous sequels for popular games as well, trying to keep those franchises going. The way Nintendo churns out these games and updates really affects our experience with it, especially with adapting to newer audiences while trying to maintain the old ones. For example, when I was playing Balloon Battle with Mario Kart, I remember the rules, at least on the DS version, if you lost all of your balloons, you were out. But in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, it focused on earning points and it was time-based. Even if you lost half of your points if you lost all your balloons. So there was a slight different change in terms of adapting to current audiences. They do this because they know their audience. They know what people enjoy about their games, and they take in the nostalgia factor when releasing these games and features. When it comes to nostalgia in games, gameplay is essential, and Nintendo knows that. Nintendo relies mostly on the same concepts with porting games or creating sequels. For example, going back to our Mario Kart, every iteration of the game, the same controls were brought over. A to accelerate, B to brake, D-pad or L stick to turn and stuff like that. And the goal of each race is to race around, use items, and win by becoming first place. It's been the same gameplay concept and mechanic for 30 years. A lot of people who grew up in the 90s and beyond grew up with this game and knew how to play the game. Because of that, it makes sense for Nintendo to rely on them, knowing now they are adults and they have money, so therefore they can spend money on the game. With each game iteration also comes differences from its predecessor. Each game improves the graphics to look more HD, but not realistic to support newer consoles, which to support the idea of the HD upgrade logic. Each game brings new features from the previous one. For example, Mario Kart 8 on the Wii U introduced ATVs and anti-gravity tracks, while Mario Kart 8 Deluxe brought those features over, as well as double item boxes, new items, and battle mode returning. Each game bring back tracks from previous games also, as well as bringing new tracks in as well. All of this is to say that they want to keep things fresh within the series. I mean, hey, if it's not broken, don't fix it, right? But what makes Mario Kart unique? Why does everyone love it so much? Could it be the courses? Could it be the characters? I mean, after all, it's a racing game, but I would say what makes Mario Kart unique, specifically the items, and ability to mess with your opponents in various ways throughout the race and other crazy mechanics. And if they removed it, it would just be in a normal racing game. And Mario Kart was the first to do so. Nintendo essentially turned a normal racing game into a chaotic time with friends by adding various items and mechanics. I'm sure this is why people love Mario Kart, is because of the gameplay of it and then the chaos. As mentioned earlier on, Nintendo achieves this nostalgia in various ways. In the form of new features to current games, in the form of sequels, and in the form of ports. Sometimes there might be a combination of features, sequels, and ports. Nintendo wants to bring these retro games and gameplay to their modern consoles so that it not only reaches the retro gamer demographic, but also gets exposed to new audiences and might pique their interest to play some of these older titles and newer iterations so they can build that fan base. The more people that experience the games, whether it be a new player, veteran players, whoever, the more money Nintendo makes. Looking at the sales as a whole, Mario Kart 8 sold over 50 million copies. This goes between both Mario Kart 8 for the Wii U and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe for the Nintendo Switch as of February 2022. Obviously, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe overtook Mario Kart Wii as the best-selling entry in the series. Instead of just releasing another game, Nintendo decided to linger on this game longer because they know they could make money off of it. Hence, this is why they waited 7 years to introduce the Booster Pass DLC for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. They do these ports rather than just making the older consoles more accessible is for numerous of reasons. For one, the parts for older consoles may not be accessible or it can't be fully remade with modern technology. And the second thing is they add new features to these new ports to add more value to the game. Otherwise, people will just go back and play the old game. And of course, Nintendo is stingy with their games in general. Plus, if they waited long enough, people would eventually give in and buy the game since it's been out for so long and there hasn't been a new Mario Kart game in ages. Mario Kart Tour, however, is a different exception. It brought the Mario Kart experience to the mobile and introduced a lot of cool mechanics that hasn't been introduced in any other Mario Kart game. By porting over these games and creating these sequels to modern consoles, Nintendo was also showing off the Switch's capabilities in graphics and hardware that the previous console generations didn't have. So, Nintendo uses ports, sequels, and updates, not to only bring older games to newer hardware, but also to target both the older and newer graphics of these games so they can make money off of it, of course. We all grew up with various Nintendo games, from Pokemon and NES to Mario Kart. Looking back at those games now brings a lot of nostalgia to us when we play it now as an adult. Nintendo uses this nostalgia as a string to pull when pointing over these games because, well, they can make it more accessible to everyone, old and new gamers, and veteran players can relive altered versions of the game while keeping the gameplay the same. While having recycles of the same game features and content over and over again is a good business model to rely on, but what would the new generation have to look back to if there's not any original content?